I need to make something clear. My aunt's voice sliced through the quiet murmur of Grandpa's funeral reception like a knife. The clinking of dishes and low hum of conversation came to an abrupt halt as she stood, smoothing her black dress. Your father left everything to Emmy. The rest of you get nothing. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. The plate of untouched food in my hand suddenly felt heavier, like it was made of stone. All around me, relatives froze mid-sentence. Uncle Robert's mouth fell open. Cousin Beth's eyes filled with tears. Even the kids at the dessert table stopped giggling. I set my plate down carefully on the nearest table, my pulse pounding in my ears. My hand went instinctively to my bag, feeling the stiff edges of the folder inside. Aunt Sharon had no idea what she'd just walked into, because tucked inside that folder was the truth, Grandpa's real will, signed and notarized just 2 weeks before he died. My name is Hazel, I'm 28 years old, and that document wasn't just paper to me. It was my grandfather's final voice, his proof that he hadn't forgotten any of us, no matter what Sharon had told the family. I wasn't thinking about money. It wasn't about who got the house or the savings or the car. It was about justice, about stopping the lies that had poisoned our family for years. Have you ever been pushed aside by your own blood? I have. And if you know that feeling, that ache of being unseen, unheard, you understand why I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Aunt Sharon had always been possessive of Grandpa, even when Grandma was still alive. But after Grandma passed, that possessiveness turned into control. I was only 8 at the time, but even then I saw the shift. She moved into Grandpa's house within a month, insisting it was for his own good. Dad needs someone to take care of him, she told everyone. I live closest, so it just makes sense. Nobody questioned her, not at first. We were all grieving. Grandpa had lost the love of his life, and everyone was relieved that someone was stepping in to help. But by that first Christmas without Grandma, it was clear Sharon wasn't just helping. She was taking over. When my parents and I showed up at Grandpa's for the holiday, we barely recognized the place. The furniture was rearranged, Grandma's photos were gone, and the house, once warm and familiar, felt like a stranger's home. Oh, we already exchanged gifts this morning, Sharon said when my mom tried to hand Grandpa his present. Dad was feeling tired, so we did it early. Grandpa looked puzzled. We did, he asked softly. Of course, Sharon said quickly. Remember the sweater? I watched his brow furrow, then smooth as he nodded uncertainly. Later, when she was in the kitchen, I found our wrapped gifts hidden in a hall closet. They were still there when we left that evening. By the time I was 14, visiting Grandpa had become something you had to schedule, literally. Sharon controlled everything, right down to the minute. Dad tires easily, she'd say after exactly an hour, ushering us toward the door. He needs his rest. When I graduated high school, I couldn't wait to see Grandpa in the crowd. He'd always promised he'd be there, cheering the loudest. But when I scanned the audience that day, his seat was empty. That night, Sharon called my mom. Dad woke up feeling too weak for such a long ceremony, she said, sounding perfectly sympathetic. He sends his love. A week later, when I visited, Grandpa smiled when he saw me. I thought your graduation was next month, he said. I've been looking forward to it. It was last week, I told him gently. He frowned. Sharon told me it was in July. As the years went on, Sharon tightened her grip. She took over his bank accounts, screened every call, and hovered during every visit. If anyone questioned her, she played the martyr, the devoted daughter who'd sacrificed everything to care for her aging father while the rest of us did nothing. But I saw the cracks. Once, when she left the room to answer the door, Grandpa reached for my hand. His eyes, usually foggy, were suddenly sharp and desperate. I feel like a prisoner in my own home, he whispered. Before I could respond, Sharon returned, and he shrank back into silence. Last year, things got worse. Grandpa's medication seemed to make him groggy and confused all the time. He'd drift mid-conversation, slurring words, forgetting what day it was. Sharon said it was normal decline, that the doctor wasn't concerned. But something felt off. When I called, she always had an excuse. He was sleeping, he was out, he wasn't up for company. When I did manage to speak to him, his voice was faint, distant, like he was underwater. Then one day, he said something that made my blood run cold. She's giving me pills, he murmured. I froze. What kind of pills, Grandpa? But before he could answer, Sharon's voice echoed in the background, cheerful and sharp. Dad, who are you talking to? The line went dead a second later. That was the moment I knew something had to be done. A few months later, I got a call from Grandpa's lawyer. Not Sharon's, but his personal attorney, the one he'd had long before she came into the picture. He said Grandpa had made some late adjustments to his estate plan and wanted me to be aware. I met him the next day. What he showed me made everything click into place. It was a new will, signed, dated, notarized, and completely different from the one Sharon had filed after the funeral. In this one, Grandpa divided everything evenly among his children and grandchildren. Sharon still had a share, but not control. That was the folder sitting in my bag at the reception, the one that could destroy her story. So while everyone stared at Sharon, stunned by her announcement, I stood quietly, letting her talk. I wanted her to finish. I wanted her to believe she'd won. Because when I opened that folder, it wouldn't just be a legal document I was holding. It would be the truth. Grandpa's truth. And it was time everyone finally heard it. When I once managed to visit while Sharon was in the shower, Grandpa confided in me. He was surrounded by bottles of pills, many of which didn't match what his doctor had prescribed. Alarm bells rang in my head. I reported my concerns to Grandpa's physician, but Sharon always attended his appointments, speaking for him and brushing off his confusion as symptoms of dementia. The doctor accepted her explanations. I felt powerless, forced to watch the man who had raised me grow weaker under her control, while the truth of what I suspected stayed locked inside my chest. Sharon wasn't taking care of Grandpa. She was isolating him, manipulating him, and waiting for him to die. 2 months before he passed, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Hazel, it's Grandpa, came his voice, clearer than it had been in ages. I'm using the neighbor's phone. Can you come tomorrow at 2? Sharon has a doctor's appointment. The next afternoon, I parked a block away and walked to his house, constantly glancing over my shoulder, afraid Sharon's plans might have changed. Grandpa opened the door before I could even knock. We don't have much time, he said urgently, pulling me inside. He looked thinner than I remembered, but his eyes were sharper than they'd been in months. He led me into his study and closed the door. I think Sharon has been drugging me, he said without preamble. I've been pretending to take my pills, then spitting them out when she's not looking. My head's clearer now. I felt my chest tighten. We need to get you out of here, I said. It's not that simple, he murmured, sinking into his chair. Sharon's changed my will. I found the paperwork in her room. She's made herself the sole beneficiary and executor. She's been moving money around too. My stomach dropped. That's elder abuse, Grandpa. It's illegal. I know, he said, rubbing his face, but it's my word against hers, and she's convinced everyone I have dementia. Who's going to believe me? He reached into his desk and pulled out a small key. This is why I needed to see you. It opens my safe deposit box at First National. Box 327. I stared at it, confused. What's inside? My real will. His eyes met mine. Judge Reynolds helped me. He even brought a notary here last week while Sharon was out. The will leaves everything divided equally among all my grandchildren. There's also documentation of the financial irregularities I've noticed, statements showing withdrawals I never made. We need to tell the police, I urged. Not yet, Grandpa said firmly. Sharon's careful. She's covered her tracks. If we move too soon, she'll destroy the evidence. We need to be strategic. After leaving Grandpa's house, I drove straight to a lawyer friend who specialized in elder law. She confirmed what Grandpa had said. The new will would be legally valid if properly executed and notarized, especially with a judge as witness. She also explained the legal steps I should take when the time came. For the next several weeks, I carried the weight of that secret like a stone on my chest. I checked the safe deposit box and found everything Grandpa had promised. The will, the financial records, even a signed statement from him declaring his mental competence and detailing Sharon's manipulation. I wanted to act immediately to rescue Grandpa from Sharon's grip, but he'd made me promise to wait. She's watching me too closely, he had said. If she suspects anything, she'll move everything offshore where you'll never find it. So I waited. I scanned the obituaries every day, dreading the inevitable phone call. When it came, I wasn't ready. Grandpa was gone. Even though I'd known it was coming, the loss hit me like a punch to the gut. But he hadn't left me defenseless. The day after his death, I called my cousin Jamie. We'd been close as children but drifted apart as adults, thanks mostly to Sharon's gatekeeping. After expressing my condolences, I asked, "Have you noticed anything strange about Sharon's behavior toward Grandpa?" Jamie's voice hardened. "You mean besides how she's isolated him from the family for years? Or how she suddenly became his medical proxy without telling anyone?" My throat tightened. "So, it wasn't just me," I whispered. "Not at all," Jamie said. "Last month, I tried to visit Grandpa for his birthday. Sharon told me he was too confused to have visitors and that it would only upset him. When I insisted, she threatened to call the police. We spoke for over an hour." Jamie confirmed everything I had suspected and even revealed things I hadn't known. How Sharon had told Grandpa that family members had declined his invitations when in fact she'd never passed them along. How she'd convinced him his memory was failing whenever he mentioned calls or letters she'd intercepted. "What can we do now?" Jamie asked. "She's won, hasn't she? Grandpa's gone." "Maybe not," I said. "I have something, but I need your help." Next, I tracked down Judge Reynolds, Grandpa's old friend and the witness to his real will. Sharon had told him Grandpa no longer wanted contact with him, a man who'd been like a brother for over 50 years. I knew something wasn't right. The judge said when I explained everything, "Your grandfather would never cut me off like that. We played cards every Thursday for decades." I nodded, my resolve hardening. For years, Sharon had controlled the narrative. But now, at last, Grandpa's voice, his real voice, could still be heard, even from beyond the grave. He'd promised he would come to the funeral, not just to pay respects, but to stand by me if things turned ugly. "Try and keep me away, young lady," he'd said, his tone leaving no room for argument. By the night before the service, our small circle of quiet resistance had grown. Judge Reynolds had reached out to Grandpa's old attorney, who agreed to attend. Jamie had talked to a few cousins who'd each had their own unpleasant run-ins with Sharon's controlling behavior. Even my parents, who usually avoided confrontation at all costs, had decided to back me up. "We're not trying to start a fight," I reminded everyone. "We just need to be prepared when Sharon does." The funeral itself went exactly as she'd planned, short, sterile, and focused entirely on her self-declared sainthood. Sharon sat in the front pew, perfectly positioned for maximum visibility, her handkerchief fluttering like a prop as she dabbed at eyes that were far too dry for the grief she performed. She whispered loudly to anyone within earshot about how difficult the last months had been and how she never left his side, not once. From 3 rows back, I watched her slip a note to the funeral director. "I'll need everything cleared out by next week," she murmured. "I'm thinking of selling." The director nodded with practiced sympathy, oblivious to the rage simmering in my chest. After the service, I moved through the small crowd, seeking out those who had managed to stay connected to Grandpa despite Sharon's constant interference. His next-door neighbor pulled me aside, voice trembling as she confided that she'd helped Grandpa make secret phone calls when Sharon was out. "He was worried," she said softly. "He mentioned you a lot, said you were the only one who really saw what was happening." When Judge Reynolds arrived, late as always but commanding attention, heads turned. Sharon's face tightened the instant she saw him, though she quickly masked it with a syrupy smile. "Judge, how wonderful you could come," she gushed. "Dad would have been so pleased." "Would he?" the judge replied coolly. "Strange, since I was told he didn't want to see me anymore." Her mask cracked just for a moment before she retreated to check on refreshments. The reception was held at what Sharon now called her house, Grandpa's home, stripped of his warmth. His chair was gone, his photos replaced by hers, and the books that once lined his study shelves had been boxed away. I stood there feeling the ache of absence when Judge Reynolds joined me. "Your grandfather was one of the finest men I ever knew," he said, resting a steady hand on my shoulder. "He saw this coming, you know. Told me, Sharon thinks she's clever, but Hazel's the one with real sense. He always believed in you." Tears blurred my vision. "I miss him so much." "I know," the judge said gently, "but he trusted you with the truth. Don't forget that." Across the room, Sharon was now in full command mode, chatting about how she might redo the kitchen, maybe tear down a wall or two. Of course, she said sweetly. I'll let everyone take one small keepsake before I sell. The judge gave me a quiet nod. Are you ready? My hand brushed against the folder in my bag. As ready as I'll ever be. Sharon tapped a spoon against her glass, her false composure back in place. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice heavy with rehearsed sorrow. Dad would have appreciated this. Before everyone goes, I need to address a few practical matters. As Dad's sole beneficiary and executor, I'll be managing all his affairs. If anyone has personal belongings here, please remove them today. The property will be listed for sale next month. Murmurs rippled through the room. Sharon raised her voice. Dad left everything to me. That was his wish. We have to respect it. My heart pounded. I stepped forward, clutching the folder. Actually, Aunt Sharon, I said clearly, that's not true. The room fell silent. Sharon's expression hardened. What are you talking about? I opened the folder and held up the document inside. Grandpa revised his will 2 weeks before he passed. This is his real last testament, properly signed and notarized. That's impossible, she hissed. He wasn't mentally competent. He was perfectly competent, Judge Reynolds cut in, stepping beside me. I was there along with a certified notary. Your father was of sound mind and very specific about his wishes. Sharon lunged toward me, but Jamie quickly blocked her path. I think we'd all like to hear what it says, he said firmly. The family attorney, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward and adjusted his glasses. The estate, he began, is to be divided equally among all grandchildren. The house is to be placed in a family trust and kept as a gathering place for holidays and reunions. He paused, looking directly at Sharon. And there's a clause requiring an immediate review of any financial irregularities found in your management of his accounts. Color drained from Sharon's face. She looked around for support, but no one met her eyes. This is fraud, she spat. I'll contest it. You're welcome to try, the judge replied calmly. But your father left documentation, detailed records of unauthorized withdrawals. If you contest the will, those records will become public. For a long moment, Sharon stood frozen, speechless. Then she turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door so hard that one of Grandpa's old fishing photos fell from the wall. Nobody moved to pick it up. In the stillness that followed, something shifted. Aunt Beth came forward first, tears streaming down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. He'd be so proud of you. Others joined, one by one, sharing stories and memories that Sharon had tried to bury. Cousin Mike found a box hidden in her room, full of old cards and letters from family that Grandpa never received. Let's read them to him, someone said. So we did. As the evening stretched on, we laughed and cried, piecing together fragments of love Sharon had tried to erase. Plans formed for a real memorial the next weekend, one filled with warmth and truth. Jamie squeezed my hand as family filled the room with laughter again. Same time next Christmas? He asked softly. I smiled through tears. Grandpa would like that. Standing up for what's right isn't easy, especially when it means facing someone who spent years manipulating the truth. But in that moment, I realized Grandpa's greatest gift wasn't the inheritance he left behind. It was the courage he inspired in me, and the family he brought back together by trusting me to defend his legacy. Love, not money, was what he valued most. And by keeping that love alive, we finally honored him the way he deserved.